Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-commerce.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holt's back again with another E-commerce Conversations. I hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the table from me, Tony. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
What's
excited
up,
to be
man?
here.
Yeah, excited to see you, man. How are things going?
Things are good, man. It's a nice, sunny, great weather day in Austin after all the crazy freeze and all that stuff we've had, so can't complain.
Yeah. What do you do, man?
So, e-commerce, I own a brand called TimberVaults, and what it is concealment furniture. So think like a shelf that you mount on the wall or a mirror, but within that is a secret compartment, and it has a RFID electronic lock that opens up that secret compartment. And yeah, that's what we sell.
How does that RFID work? Is it like a keypad that you put up to it, or is it like a phone? Or
yeah, so it's just think a credit card or like a quarter-sized disc or like a key fob or something like that you put on the specific area of the shelf or of the mirror, and it pops open. We're moving to add in a Bluetooth like phone-enabled option as well, but right now it's just RFID, and yeah.
How do, like, I assume things that are stored in there are all sorts of things, but guns being one of them, right?
Yeah, so I bought the brand a little while ago, a few months back, and it was primarily focused on the gun niche, which, you know, people have guns and a lot of time they don't store them properly, and that has disastrous consequences, right? Kid finds it just stored in like a open drawer or nightstand or something, that's a problem. This product allows you to store it safely, but still have access to it in the event of emergency. Where I see the future opportunity, though, is people want to store other things than guns, right? Like there's things in everybody's house that they don't want sort of the public to see. And that's where I want to take the brand in the future.
Yeah. What are some of those things? Like, I'm not like a prepper, but I mean, like for people listening, like.
Yeah, sure. It's the gun thing, obviously. Right. But I think there's a community of people that, let's say, use recreational substances.
Okay, yeah.
That seems to be relatively prevalent here in Austin, and you may want to restrict access to that. Mm-hmm. Another thing that popped into my head that I think will be a market for this is adult toy type objects, you know, that you just don't want to leave out on your nightstand and let your cleaning lady find. And so, yeah, that's the idea of, there's a whole host of things, jewelry, passports, documents, papers, all of that.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a gold bug, so like getting my gold in there and silver and.
Yeah, you could certainly put that in there as well.
How discreet are the safes or the vaults? Are they?
It just looks like a shelf or a mirror or vanity that you would see in your house. We're going to add some new options down the line, like a key rack on the entryway, a coat rack, you know, a chalkboard, picture frame. And it just looks like a standard item that you see in your house. But behind it is this false wall, if you will, that you can store whatever items.
Yeah. Do customers have concern with like kids getting the RFID?
I guess
or like where do people keep it on their keychain or like?
Yeah, people keep it on their keychain. They'll keep the card in their wallet, and then there's like a little quarter-sized disc. What a lot of people will do is they'll glue it underneath, say like an ornament or something that they store on the shelf. They'll put that ornament in the corner, and then when they need to access the vault, they'll just move that ornament to where, like right above the lock, and then it pops open and pops out. And that's, you know, the best way because it's always right there where it needs to be close by, but isn't visible for a curious kid that's going to find it.
Yeah. So the key is kind of installing it with your kid not around.
Exactly. Yep.
And not using it when they're not around unless it's an emergency.
Precisely. Yep.
You mentioned that you purchased this. Like, how do you find a company like this? What was that process like?
Yeah, so I was looking to buy something else in the e-commerce space. Had been looking on a lot of the brokerages that you see out there. It actually came via word of mouth. A mutual friend of ours, Brendan, that lives here in Austin as well. He was approached by the previous owner of the brand looking to sell it. It wasn't a good fit for Brendan because of the, I guess, nature of what is being stored in it. I thought it was cool, and so it seemed to be a good fit, and that's how I found it via word of mouth.
Yeah. How did you work through those negotiations? So they're selling it. I assume you kind of have like the negotiational power in that dynamic.
Yeah, to a degree. I won't profess that I'm an expert negotiator at all. I'm sure I made a ton of mistakes, so relied on my lawyer to sort of help me out there to ask for certain things. And yeah, just kind of laid out what I wanted. The seller was fairly transparent and seemed like a great guy, clean enough book, simple enough business that it didn't take too much in terms of due diligence. And yeah, just went from there with negotiating on a price and terms.
Yeah. Was this your first business you purchased?
It is, yep.
What kind of mistakes did you make along the way that you wish you knew?
So the big mistake, if I do this again or when I do this again, is in e-commerce, there's all these ancillary partners that touch the brand. Some people are going to hear this and think this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing, but I'll share it anyway.
We're all idiots. Yeah. That's why we're listening to podcasts to figure it
out. But there's all these, ancillary entities that touch the brand. Obviously, there's like the manufacturer, but then maybe you have marketing agencies that do little pieces that aren't big pieces of the brand, 3PL, all of that. It seemed like all of those people you had verbal conversations with in advance sort of got pricing, but very quickly after, they all said, oh, we need to up our price.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And not all of them, but a lot of them tried to raise their price, not by a price gouging amount, but by a percent that was meaningful.
Do you think that was from like the COVID lockdowns and just inflationary period, or do you think it was because of the transition of ownership?
I don't know. I get it. Like if you're a marketing agency and you're like, hey, this could be an opportunity to raise my price, let's try it. I probably would have done the same thing. And again, each one of these in their silo weren't huge dollar changes, but when you add them all up, can have a material impact. So that's something that I probably would have gotten in writing for more of those partners besides just the big ones in advance. That's probably the biggest mistake that I had and takeaway. And then the other piece that sort of caught me off guard in buying it is, because it is currently marketed towards the gun niche, obviously there's a lot of platforms that you can't advertise on. I knew that going in. We did fairly good due diligence with looking at Facebook, Amazon, looking at their policies. And what we sell by their advertising guidelines is allowed. Gun safes explicitly are allowed. However, in implementation, when you go try to run ads, if there's a picture of a gun in it, the algorithm automatically kicks it out, and it's a whole process. It just makes advertising on certain platforms not feasible.
Can you do like water guns in there or some kind of like...
I could, but I even went with the approach of removing a picture of a gun and just having a cutout, like a silhouette of a gun and a white sheet of paper where the gun would be. And that shape was flagged by their AI. And it was just such a pain in the butt. If you're trying to A/B test a bunch of ads and you got to like wait and like go through all these channels and then your account gets shut down because you've had so many policy violations, it just, Facebook became not feasible for us.
Yeah.
So that kind of sucked.
So still sticking with the purchase, how did you come to an agreement for the valuation? Did you make the first offer? Did they, or?
They had a number in mind. Let's see. So I paid probably a little bit too much because I was looking at and knew the potential of it with expanding to bigger markets. I saw some product things that I could do, but they came with the first offer. I negotiated down a little bit from that first offer, but not a significant amount. I'm still happy with, the purchase price that we paid for it, just because we've been able to grow it quite a bit, just as I imagined.
Yeah. Did you have to get any kind of financing or owner financing or?
Yeah. So did savings to purchase the business itself and then seller financing to purchase the inventory over a period of time.
Okay. And that's been able to help the business essentially run cash flow positive during this time period?
Sure. Yep. Exactly.
One of the things that we talked about before is, you're now in the manufacturing game too, aren't you?
Yeah. So the manufacturing before was done in Brazil, which is a very challenging country to manufacture in. especially where this is in Brazil. It's not a common trade route into the US. They don't get ships very often. It's expensive, way more expensive than shipping from Asia. And so started looking for alternative manufacturing partners pretty early on. We've since settled on and found a US manufacturer that's able to effectively be at the same price, but to offer trade terms, which for an e-commerce business, everybody knows that that can be a gold mine relative to getting it for a little bit cheaper in, say, Southeast Asia, but you have to pay up front. You got all that capital tied up, 30 days on the water, all of that as it comes over. So the big lesson that I've learned is don't be shy to explore the U.S. manufacturing as a viable option. I just assumed that it was going to be more expensive, but lo and behold, the terms are good. The price is reasonable. The only downside is there's been a stop, or I guess a little bit of a gap in inventory. So here in my house in South Austin, I've been building some of these shelves myself to ship out, which has not been fun.
How many SKUs do you guys have? Is it all the SKUs that you've got to build, or?
No, so there's currently 26 SKUs. We trim that down to sort of the most popular option. So I think running forward with the old designs that the brand had, there's probably about 18 or so of those that we're going to keep. And so what we're doing is some of those best-selling SKUs, I'm just building some of those. We're talking about, 4 to 6 weeks gap here that I'm going to need to be doing this. I could shut it off and not get sales, but, it's hard to do that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people would just be like, well, okay, we're out of stock for 4 weeks and tough luck. Do you, I guess there's going to be differences in quality between batches or how it's produced, but most people probably aren't buying multiple vaults, are they? Or
some people do buy multiples, but most people are buying single vaults. So that, differences in, say, paint color or, slight wood thickness or something like that isn't going to have a material impact. So to date, that hasn't been a concern.
With you getting your hands dirty making this product, did you think about just becoming a manufacturer and not having it be a stopgap? And
man, I did, but in my e-commerce business that I had before, I actually did have a manufacturing space, and that's a whole new animal that I don't want to get involved in again.
What are for anyone listening who's thinking about getting into manufacturing, why should they not get into manufacturing?
I think manufacturing, at least my experience in it, the challenge wasn't the physical good and the product. It was the people management of, workers that are manufacturing things and finding quality employees, US prices, wrangling them, no show. That was by far the hardest piece of it. People will go out and set up their own 3PL, which obviously has its challenges, but I think the manufacturing piece is probably that 10x on steroids.
Yeah.
And isn't something that I want to take on because it takes my eyes off of, marketing, growing the brand aware, that sort of thing that I think will propel us forward better than relying on a manufacturing partner that's already set up, that has those processes, tools, and employees in place.
Yeah. So speaking of marketing, you mentioned the big opportunity you saw in acquiring this business was the potential for where you're going beyond guns.
Sure.
And novelty. I guess they call them novelty items.
Yep.
And, recreational products of all sorts. How are you going to market that? Because that feels like it's still a restricted category as well. Or is it less restricted?
My plan of attack is, and this is subject to interpretation, but my plan of attack is to effectively have two brands selling the identical product. There's the gun niche that operates under TimberVaults that's just solely focused on the gun niche. And then there's the everything else sort of brand category. And the thinking there is sometimes people see a gun and they're automatically turned off and say, I'm not buying for this brand. Or if you're a gun person and you see
a bunch of stoners,
or, Westlake moms with adult toys that they're storing, maybe that turns you off on the, the gun storage thing.
You got to keep them turned on. Right?
So it just feels like splitting it into two. I know there's going to be a loss of SEO juice, all of that, but I think splitting it into two is going to serve me better because I can speak more clearly to each of those niches.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It is a restricted product in some of those other categories, but a lot of that will rely on just influencers, YouTube, seeding product, blog posts, that sort of thing is how we're going to try to grow that piece.
What's that brand going to be called? Do you have a name yet? Or
I do, but I haven't
it's
released
still,
it yet.
Yeah,
Yep.
Skunkworks. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
So you're going the affiliate route. Do you have these connections, and how do you identify the right person to talk about the product?
I don't have those connections built in. That's something that we're doing research internally of, using that team that I have to go out and just find YouTube people, find blogs, and just start seeding the product to get the word out. So the jury's out on what that's going to look like, but that's kind of the plan of attack that we want to take, is build that organic army, if you will, of people to talk about the brand.
The product, is it like actually installed between like 2x4s, or is it its own kind of unit that you just kind of bolt to the wall?
It depends on the unit that you're talking about. Some of the mirrors do recess and they're installed between 2x4s, whereas others just sort of screw into the wall and mount on the wall. So there's both options to lower that barrier to entry and commitment that's required. If you're an apartment dweller, you're not going to be cutting holes in your sheetrock.
Right. Well, I mean, also like if I'm like a mom blogger or whatever, I'm probably not whipping out
Sure.
a saw and
Yep.
and installing it and stuff like that. So I would imagine like the barrier to get affiliates on board would be pretty challenging if you didn't have, an easier kind of
Sure.
install.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an issue. The other thing that I think, it's a solvable challenge. You can hire people via Thumbtack remotely to go do the install for them if they don't want that, if it's the right partner to try to get it set up. But
are you going to integrate that into your selling process at all?
as of now, I'm not, no. But maybe that's another opportunity for us.
Yeah, I mean, because as a consumer, I would have never thought. I don't know what Thumbtack is. Like, I have no idea.
Or Thumbtack or
TaskRabbit.
TaskRabbit, same thing. It's just a handyman type service or person that can go out and do, set up IKEA furniture for you, if you will.
I would imagine that would be a good part of like your flow, your email post-purchase flow.
Yeah.
Is getting that in there to make sure that they get it. And it's like, all right, here's your next step. Schedule your installer.
Yeah.
We recommend these two options.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that may be something that we explore certainly down the line to see if we can get some service revenue out of that for installing the thing.
Yeah, I would imagine that like unless you have that somewhere in the sales process too, like that would really be an objection for a lot of people as a lazy guy, I guess.
Yeah.
A lazy dumb guy who doesn't realize there's options out there to
Sure.
install. So, well, that's pretty exciting. So you're going the affiliate route. You mentioned you had a team of people who are kind of going after that. How did you build that team, and how do you set the SOP for what they're doing to reach out to these partners?
Yeah, so this is, again, all new strategy, new to me. But what we're going to use is so all of my employees are remote in the Philippines. And so we'll use the SEO backlink building type people to do this research, affiliate marketing, YouTuber, influencer outreach and screening. We'll probably augment that with, Chat GPT or something to create scripts and SOPs and all of that. And so we're going to be making it up as we go. Yeah. Obviously, you can hire services out to do that, but it just feels like this is something where you want to build that engine in-house because that's going to add value over the long term.
How do you find the right people in the Philippines, hire them, manage them, hold them accountable, make sure they're productive team members?
Yeah, so my screening process, I guess, is fairly robust. I use, there's a book, I forget the name of the author, but it's the Who hiring method that we utilize, checking references early on, doing an Easter egg in the application, and just doing all of these sort of gates, if you will, to screen down to the right candidate. The big one, though, is just checking references, talking to their former employers. But before that, it's creating a scorecard of what this employee is going to be doing, what metrics are going to be judged on, what their expectations are. And that really helps to narrow our scope and our focus of who the right candidate is and what we're looking for, as opposed to just creating a job post, putting it out there, and they're like, oh, this person looks cool and they can do this. Let's hire them. Just being a little bit more disciplined and regimented about it.
What does the scorecard look like? Can you be specific on
Sure. It's the type of tasks that they may be doing.
So let's say for the affiliate outreach, what would that scorecard look like?
Yeah, so affiliate outreach may say something like, I'm shooting from the hip, making this up on the fly, but they're expected to reach out to X number of people per month, expected to onboard X number of affiliates per month, manage the affiliate process, provide payments, and provide, quarterly, or not quarterly, but say weekly reporting to the management team of affiliate traffic, and then payouts to affiliates, something like that, right?
Yeah. How do you know those numbers are appropriate? Like, have you done it yourself to know that, reaching out to 100 people a month is doable, or do you just make it up?
Kind of make it up. And it's, I wouldn't get too hung up on what those numbers are, because they may change and evolve, especially if it's a new role like this. They change and evolve over time. If it's like a CS role or an email or something that we've had in the past, then you can be much more concrete of what you're looking for, because very explicitly what the role is going to take. And then with it, going back to that scorecard, in addition to having all those metrics, having, a growth plan, some nice to haves for the employee, education, those sorts of things, skill, different technical skill sets. And then it removes some of the subjectiveness in hiring, because maybe you interview somebody and you just really hit it off with them, and that blinds you to the fact that they don't have the criteria, what it takes. If you have a scorecard that's already pre-written, it's very black or white. Does this person meet the criteria or not? And then once you have the pool of 3 to 4 or 5 people that meet the criteria, then you interview them and sort of rank them to find the A players, check references to see what they've done in the past, and go from there.
How long will it take you from posting the job, creating the scorecard, to hiring them?
In the Philippines, especially now, there seems to be a deep pool of people with e-commerce marketing, just agency type experience. And so you get a ton of candidates, at least right now, we're in this, when we're recording this podcast. But I don't want to hire the wrong person, so I'm going to take as long as it takes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're able to knock it out in 2 or 3 weeks, but sometimes it may take 6 weeks of 2 months or something to find the right person.
Is the expectation they work on U.S. time zones, or with a role like this, is it more asynchronous?
It depends. Some of the employees that we have are U.S. time zones, and then some are asynchronous. If it's something like this where they don't necessarily need to be communicating in real time with customers, asynchronous is fine with a few hours of U.S. overlap so that we can communicate with each other. But it varies. We have some that are asynchronous and some are U.S. time zones.
Yeah. Are you targeting creators and affiliates and bloggers in the U.S. only? Is that going to be your market? Or because this is a big, heavy product, right?
Sure. Yeah. U.S. only for now. Maybe we expand in the future, but U.S. only for now. Yeah. And you're right. It is a heavy product. So air shipping this to the UK or something just isn't feasible.
Yeah. And they probably don't have a lot of guns over there either.
Exactly.
Put into safes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've built out this model. You have like weekly calls with your team members in the Philippines, or what does that ongoing communication look like?
Yeah, so I guess maybe before we dive into that, my management style is, again, managing sort of to the scorecard of each team member. And I don't want to be a micromanager. I don't want to be in the weeds ensuring each day that they're sort of on task. And so we use some of the elements of Traction when it comes to management. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book, Gino Wickman's book. Wickman, I'm not sure what his last name is, but I'll have a weekly, just all hands on deck meeting, and then team meetings with sort of each core person once a week as well, just to catch up, make the floor open for them to fill us in on anything that needs to be brought to our attention that we may not be aware of, and share ideas and just see where we stand in terms of projects.
Yeah. Yeah. So just kind of like where you can support them and help
Yep.
them out. But your team is entirely overseas. Anyone you're bringing here in the States, or
as of now, no one in the States. Yeah, and it just no W-2s. No, it's great.
Do you own this business 100%?
Correct.
How do you deal with the challenge of getting lonely or getting indecisive with your decisions?
Man, that's the beauty, I think, of living here in Austin. I mentioned Brendan of Lori Beds earlier. He lives down the street from me. We were just hanging out with our kids in the Greenbelt over the weekend and just, talking about shop, talking about life. I'm also part of a mastermind through the Dynamite Circle that I meet with once a week. every Wednesday, and that's been going strong for almost 2 years now. Gives me an ability to bounce ideas off of other people. Because you're right, it can get lonely, and you can get in your head and sort of drive yourself nuts of, am I doing the right thing? But having really smart people like Brendan and now yourself here in Austin to be able to just catch up with and meet with is, I can't do it without, that group of people.
Yeah. How would you recommend like listeners who are solopreneurs, which I think has got to be the hardest thing ever? Like I couldn't do it because I completely freeze and clam up when I have the most asinine decision to make. It is just like so stupid. But for whatever reason, I'll just like sit on my thumbs. Like how do you become vulnerable to kind of like talk about the problems you're having? Or like, do you have any reservations with what you share and who you share it to? Or
I think naturally my personality tends to be an undersharer. And so it can be a little bit hard for me to open up and be vulnerable. But, having that core group or, a couple friends that you can share challenges with and that are in the trenches and, you've built a relationship with over time, it now seems completely open and transparent and second nature to just share openly with those guys.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're able to maintain a balance with, you talked about kids earlier, that balance between maintaining a relationship with your partner and your kids and your team and grow the business? Like, how do you manage that balance?
Poorly, probably. It goes in waves. I think it's a big piece. I try to prioritize family time, playing with family, all of that, even if it's at the expense of earning, that's totally fine. Brendan and I were having a discussion the other day that my son, Adam, he's 8 now, and it's like, I'm never going to get another summer with 8-year-old Adam ever again. You know what I mean? And so like, especially this age where your kids are just, I don't know, it's really fun. Like you want to make sure you're maximizing that time that you have with them. And if that means waking up earlier, working later, then so be it. It's kind of how I balance it.
Have you been able to get them into the garage making some products?
Yeah, I mean, I've got him like bagging up screws and doing that sort of stuff.
How does that go? Is he compliant with that, or is he a little more defiant towards?
No, at this age, he thinks that I'm cool.
Okay.
And so he just wants to be there doing stuff. And, I've tried to make it into a teachable moment, if you will, of having him earn, 50 cents for everything that he kits. And then if he messes up, then it's minus 25 cents or something like that. You know what I mean? So he understands the concept about money and like why he's doing it. And at this point in time, he thinks it's cool. So he's not griping about it. But fast forward probably 2 years and we'll be having a different conversation.
Yeah. Like all kids are different, and to a certain degree, like their personalities are their personalities. My daughter, lovely daughter, but she is very headstrong and much like her father, she doesn't like being told what to do or even suggested what to do. So like I would just imagine getting her into the garage to do some work would be really hard, but I can only imagine how valuable that time is with your kids to not just like, show them the energy and effort of work, but also business.
Sure.
And then that, kind of father-son time as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate that my dad, he had a construction company and we hated it when we were kids, but he basically forced us to work in the construction company, driving tractors, all that stuff. But looking back on it, it was valuable time, learning different skills, learning how to work, the value of work, and just time with my dad. And I want to be able to pass some of that along with my kids. So not only do we have this history of like doing this work stuff on TimberVaults now, but we've built things together in the past. So during the pandemic, we made this little off-road teardrop camper that we, have road tripped all around the U.S. And a few weeks ago, we just finished a chicken coop in the backyard that, if you let him tell it, he built it. And then I just kind of helped a little bit. And so there's that sort of history of we've been building things since he's pretty small. And that's a fun thing for us to do together.
Well, let's talk about your dad a little bit. You said you hated doing the construction stuff as a kid. Were you pretty defiant and not wanting to do those things? Or how did he said he forced you. What did that force look like? I imagine it wasn't like he was picking you up. And
I think he's quite a bit more heavy-handed. I think looking back, OSHA probably would have frowned pretty heavily on this, having us out there driving heavy equipment at 12 years old. It's construction. It's hot. You're in the sun all summer. Your buddies are playing baseball and doing camps and all that, and you're literally, putting in pipelines or building roads in Texas sun.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Would he pay you as well?
Oh, yeah. We got paid. Sure.
But it was like minimum wage, right?
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
never anything good.
No.
Did he have to, was he an entrepreneur as well? Like,
he was, yep. So he sort of set the stage for me. He was working, I don't know what year this was, but probably would have been late 60s, early 70s at a gas station that's when they had gas station attendants.
Mm-hmm.
That was the job that he had. And one day the foreman took him in and was like, "Hey, look, man, like you've been here a long time. You're doing great." Like, and showed him this basically retirement plan and path of like being a gas station attendant person that fills your car up and checks the air in your tires. And he looked at it and he's like, "Oh my God, like I'm not doing this for another 40 years. Thank God, right? Because that's not even a thing anymore."
Yeah.
And so he saved up his money and I think he bought it with his brother, an old, just beat up dump truck that was barely running, and just started hauling dirt and just kind of built a business over time with that, and just by sheer will and force made it work.
Yeah. Is he retired now, or is he still doing it? Or
my mom's kind of insisted on him retiring, but he's still doing stuff.
Yeah. I think, like I don't go into a lot of conversations about people's parents. Like my dad had a period of time where he was entrepreneurial, and my grandparents as well owned a local bar and restaurant, and just kind of like growing up in this environment of creating your own way is almost like second nature to me. It's just kind of like the assumption of one of the things I can do. And I wonder if that's just such an advantage for entrepreneurs to grow up in that environment and see that environment.
I think it is, because it opens it up as a viable path and option. Not just, a lot of friends that I have that have parents that work professional jobs, went to college, which is nothing wrong with that, totally fine, went to college, then went and got a professional job. They assume that's like the standard and only path. But for me, seeing my parents own a business over time, it appears to be a viable path. I think the flip side of that is entrepreneurship's really hard, especially construction, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s here in Texas, boom and bust cycles. You see the good, the bad, the ugly. You see it's feast or famine, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's also the risk that your kids see you in your entrepreneurial journey, see the warts, and say, "I don't want to deal with that seasonality, stress, ups and downs. I want something more stable."
Did he open up the books to you when you were a kid?
I remember my parents talking lots about it. And so I would hear them talking about bids that they're putting out, numbers, that sort of thing. But as far as actually looking at their books and accounting and profitability, no, I didn't really dig into that too much.
Yeah. Is that something you're going to do with your?
Probably. Yeah. I think that makes sense when it's.
What age do you think is appropriate?
I don't know. I was going to say when it's age appropriate, but I don't know when that is. Maybe fairly soon. I mean, he's a pretty curious kid, and it may be something that, it's a year or two.
Yeah. I always find it really interesting, beyond the business, because I feel like we all work for something. And like you talked about earlier, for spending time with the family. A lot of podcasts put like work above everything, marketing above everything. But the reality is, like, how do we set our next generation up for success, the same kind of success that we had, or maybe our parents had, and continue that? I think is just really interesting, and the ways to do that. So,
yeah, it's definitely, the family is definitely my why of doing all this, and the flexibility and all of that stuff, certainly.
Where can people buy your products, support you, follow you, ask for advice?
Sure. So TimberVaults.com is the brand if you're looking for one of our concealment shelves, mirrors, etc. I personally am on Instagram at Tony_outside, just because I'm outside doing stuff all the time. And that's where people can find me.
Sweet, man. Well, thanks for coming by the Beard Brand office. I've enjoyed our chat. This has been another e-commerce conversations. Cheers, and keep on growing.